The middleweight title grudge match is finally upon us, 13 months in the making. But the champion is no longer Israel Adesanya. The challenger is no longer Dricus Du Plessis. No, no, no. The roles have flip-flopped. It is now the middleweight champion of the world, Dricus Du Plessis, welcoming back from a near 1 year-long hiatus former two-time middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. They will settle their beef once and for all down in Perth, Western Australia. UFC 305 goes down this Saturday. Let's get into it. Throughout Israel Adesanya's UFC tenure and title reign, we've seen him be involved in some competitive rivalries, right? We've seen him have to fight Robert Whittaker twice. We've seen him fight Marvin Vettori twice. We've seen him fight Alex Pereira, well, technically 4 times, but 2 times in the UFC. But all of those, deep down go into competitiveness. They beat one another for the title. They beat one another to get toward the title, like we're talking with Izzy and Marvin in their first fight. Then they rematch for the belt. Alex Pereira comes in, goes on a monumental run, knocks out Israel Adesanya. Israel comes back and knocks him out to regain the title. It has all been competitive rivalries up until this point right here, because now it is deeply rooted in personal animosity. It is deeply rooted in their African roots and heritage. It is deeply rooted in bragging rights for one another. Dricus Du Plessis, Israel Adesanya, it is here, it is now, and it is one of the biggest fights of 2024 on the back of a near 1 year-long hiatus for the former champion Adesanya. And I want to give a shout out to Aaron Bronstetter, one of my favorite MMA journalists in the game. I believe he's even up for Journalist of the Year for the 3rd straight year. Go vote for him if you have not. He said in the John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast, he worded it so well. He's only been out, Izzy that is, for less than a year. It will be 11 months. He fought September 9th of 2023. Now he's going to be fighting August 17th, 2024. So almost 1 full year away. Yet it feels like he's been gone for 3 or 4 years, right? That is how active of a champion Israel Adesanya has been throughout these last 4 years. This is a guy that I saw the stat on, I think it was ESPN MMA or one of the outlets said, this is the 12th straight 5-round UFC title fight for Israel Adesanya. Absolutely insane. One of the longest streaks in the history of the organization. The fight that we have to go back to that was not a 5-round championship fight was February 9th, 2019 against Anderson the Spider Silva. That is one of my favorite fights over the past decade in the UFC because that felt like a true passing of the torch style of moment. The former one of the greatest champions of all time, the greatest middleweight of all time in Anderson Silva, the original Spider, the long rangy kicker, boxer and striker with his lethal boxing, carries this division for years and years on his back. In comes the modern version of Anderson Silva with Israel Adesanya, the long rangy, deadly kickboxer. They go back and forth for 15 minutes. That puts Adesanya into the title discussion. He has the legendary fight with Kelvin Gastelum. He knocks out Robert Whittaker to become the undisputed champion. He defends the belt 4 separate times. He wins the belt back after losing to Alex Pereira. Really one of the most legendary runs that we've seen, because we have to remember Israel Adesanya debuted in the UFC February 10th of 2018, and by the time it was October 5th of 2019, he was the undisputed king of the middleweight division. And for the current champion, Dricus Du Plessis, well, he made his UFC debut just a couple of weeks after Israel Adesanya defended his title the second time against Paulo Costa. That was at UFC 253 in September of 2020. Du Plessis debuted October 10th of 2020. He took care of Marcus Perez, and that led him to go on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fight win streak in the middleweight division. That final fight on the win streak was a knockout over Robert Whittaker, and that is when these two had their paths cross inside of the UFC octagon, because at International Fight Week, UFC 290, after knocking out Robert Whittaker, something that a lot of people didn't see coming, including this guy right here. Dricus Du Plessis turns around, and there is the champion at the time, Israel Adesanya, looking to welcome him next for his title defense after having knocked out Alex Pereira that April earlier in the year. But the turnaround was not enough. Dricus could not make the switch from July to September. He had a nagging injury after that Whittaker victory. He wanted to wait on the sideline. Adesanya did not. He welcomed Sean Strickland, and we know what happened there. Sean Strickland pulled off one of the biggest upsets in mixed martial arts history and one of the most one-sided title fight victories in UFC history with a 25-minute pillar-to-post beating of Israel Adesanya that made Sean Strickland the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. And in his first title defense in January of 2024 in Canada at UFC 297, he lost a razor-close decision to now champion Dricus Du Plessis. So ever since that first loss for Izzy in the UFC to Alex Pereira, where he lost the belt, it's been playing patty cake. It's been playing hot potato. He loses the belt to Alex, then he immediately regains it back. Then he loses it to Sean Strickland. Then Sean loses it to Dricus. We've not had a champion successfully defend the title since Israel Adesanya last did in July of 2022 against Jared Cannonier. That's crazy to think about. We've had 4 different people become champion. Not one of them yet has defended that belt. But that could all change this weekend at UFC 305, as Dricus Du Plessis will come in as the slight betting underdog, at least at the time I'm recording this on Wednesday, to defend his belt for the first time against Israel Adesanya, his utter bitter rival. Even though they've never fought before, the rumor is that they've trained before many, many years ago. Their paths have now crossed again here in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and it seems like a really great time for this rivalry to happen because the middleweight division is having a lot of moving pieces but been semi-stale at the same time. We have guys like former champion Robert Whittaker staying very active, having already fought twice in 2024, but outside of him, we aren't seeing a ton of activity between the top 15 and top 10 ranked guys. Now, there are a couple coming up. We saw Cannonier and Imavov fight. That fight ended in controversy. Now we have Cannonier fighting a week after this. We have Imavov fighting soon against Brendan Allen. So it seems that this championship fight here is kick-starting the back half of 2024 for the middleweight rankings. And it seems like every fight that Dricus Du Plessis gets scheduled for, I'm sitting here watching the fights wondering, when will it be the time that he loses? This fighting style that he has cannot last forever. Surely he can never become a champion. Surely he can't beat Robert Whittaker. Well, he's done all of that and then some. In his 7 fights in the UFC, he's finished 5 of those opponents. He's only went the distance in victories twice. Actually, in his entire career, only has went the distance twice. One of those to Sean Strickland, the other to former top 15 middleweight Brad Tavares a couple of years back. That was a wild fight, by the way. But maybe it was just that nose surgery that really changed the game for Dricus, because he was able to go 25 hard minutes with Strickland without getting gassed whatsoever. He put the pressure on Robert Whittaker en route to getting that knockout last summer. He just doesn't have any one particular area where you're like, wow, that guy really excels there. He's just someone that is ultra tough, ultra durable, and will apply pressure until his opponents wilt. For Israel Adesanya, we clearly know there is a skill set there that he is remarkable in, right? His kickboxing, his long-rangey striking is some of the best that we've ever seen in mixed martial arts in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. But will that one nasty skill set that he possessed be enough to take on the dogfight mentality that Dricus Du Plessis has? Now, we've seen Adesanya get in to those dogfights, into those wars, have to dig himself out of a hole. See the fight with Kelvin Gastelum, one of the best fights in UFC history, where he literally said he was willing to die in that octagon to get the interim title wrapped around his waist. Dricus, I believe, comes from that same mindset in these fights. So now you put them two together with their contradicting styles, with their contradicting storylines. Something's got to give. For Dricus, he's going to want to press forward, on foot on the gas, make Izzy fight on his back foot. If you look at the losses of Adesanya, that is when he struggles the most. Yes, Jan Blachowicz grappled and wrestled him very well, but that was back in 2021. But if you look at Alex Pereira, he was losing that fight until he backed Izzy up against the fence. That's when he got the finish. If you look at Sean Strickland, he's very similar to Dricus in the sense of his pressure and pacing is unlike anything we see in this middleweight division. He's nonstop from round 1 to round 5, moving forward, forcing his opponents to be on the back foot. And what does he do? He nearly finishes Izzy in the first round and then beats him over the course of a 25-minute decision. Can Dricus implement that same style, or can Israel Adesanya right those wrongs after this year off? Can he put Dricus on the back foot like no one has gotten to do so far? And if he gets Dricus on the back foot, will his nasty, deadly striking and counter striking in specific be enough to put the current champion away and regain the title for the third time in this division? So give me all of your predictions for the UFC 305 main event in the comments below. This is a grudge match that's been over a year in the making at this point, just in the UFC alone, not counting their time spent training together years ago. Who's going to win it? Will Dricus successfully defend a title for the first time since 2022 in this middleweight division, or will Israel Adesanya become a 3-time 185-pound champion? Give me your predictions, give me your thoughts, and give me your bets down below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every single week, you can count on me to preview and break down the biggest storylines and what is at stake for the best fights every single weekend. I recap the most meaningful results from every card, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can join the community on social media at the BAJ MMA and follow along on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple. On there, podcast episodes are released every Friday and Monday. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and I will see you in the next video.